a month in Santa Agatha. If you've been following these little videos, you know what I'm doing and what book they're coming from. This is number 7, a month in Santa Agatha. Santa Agatha was a resort for the rich, though really, is there a resort for the poor? Year-round, it was a French-Canadian village set high in the Laurentian Mountains, about 40 minutes outside Montreal. In the summer, rich families from Montreal vacationed in Santa Agatha. So what were we doing there? Good question. First, let me remind you that in France, before the war, my parents had been rich. Summer after summer, my father sent us off on vacation. On weekends he'd visit, as was the custom among our class. So why should it be different in Montreal? Because in Montreal, we had no money. Yet, a small thing like that did not stop my father from sending me and my mother off to Santa Agatha. Weren't we as good as the rest? If not, we'd show them anyhow. The show, this was important. There was even a way of measuring how well a man had succeeded in the new country. To spend a week in Santa Agatha was a sign to your countrymen that you were doing okay. 2 weeks in Santa Agatha, and you were doing very well. 3 weeks meant you were getting up there with the Gewurzes and the Bronfmans. A month in Santa Agatha, you must be a Gewurz or a Bronfman. My father said he'd visit us on weekends, so my mother found a nice place by the lake. A French-Canadian family owned the house. In the summer, they rented rooms to vacationers like ourselves, rich people from Montreal. Everything was beautiful: the house, the lake, the people. Santa Agatha was beautiful. Sparkling hotels were arranged around the lake like diamonds. In the daytime, red boats sailed by. At night, there was music from the hotel ballrooms. Farther off at the edge of town was the railroad station, my favorite place. I used to wait for trains. I used to watch them curl down the mountain and catch a thrill when they roared in. Once a week, on Fridays, my mother came along with me to the train station to wait for my father. He was supposed to come on the 6:28. That first Friday, though, he did not show up. Was my mother alarmed? No. She called him. He said he could not make it because of business, but he'd be here next Friday. Good, said my mother. But where is the money? On its way, said my father. The money is in the mail. So the next morning we walked to the post office. There was money there, but not for us. As we walked along the beautiful streets of beautiful Santa Agatha, my mother said, "We have no money. No money for the rent of our vacation apartment. No money even for food." "So let's go back to Montreal," I said. Didn't I tell you? Didn't I just tell you? We have no money." No money even to get back to Montreal. Back in our room, we heard the music from the hotel ballrooms. My mother told me, "When I was a girl, I used to dance." The next day, she sent me to the railroad station for another purpose. We needed toilet paper. I went there every day to steal as much as I could. But food I did not steal. So we starved. Not completely, of course, because my mother borrowed bread and butter from the Ploufs, the people who owned the boarding house. They must have guessed we weren't too rich to be borrowing bread and butter, plus not paying the rent. When my husband comes, my mother kept assuring the Ploufs. But the 6:28 arrived, again without my father. So again my mother phoned him. Business, he said. Next week he'd be here for sure. Money, said my mother. We need money. Now she was alarmed. He'd already sent the money by telegraph, my father said. So we walked to the telegraph office, and there was no money. The Ploufs finally refused us bread and butter and allowed my mother one last phone call. This was what my father had to say. The reason he had sent no money was because he had no money. For the same reason, he could not come to St. Agatha. And for the same reason, we could not leave St. Agatha. Something has to change, said my mother. Either you come here or we go there. Wait another week, said my father. A week? We can't last the day, said my mother. We have no food. So I got a job as a baker's helper and earned enough money to get us back to Montreal, where my mother caused some envy among her rich friends by telling them the truth, that she'd spent a month in St. Agatha. I think what's special about this book, in addition to what it says, what it's recorded to wage against forgetfulness, is the way it's written, the way it's said. This is a special writing by a special writer.